Welcome to another in the series of blogs that Joanna Chan and I are putting together on our adventures and learnings in creating a mobile application which interfaces to the SAP NetWeaver Cloud. Today's blog is about sending nicely formatted emails with inline images using SAP NetWeaver Cloud. So I'm Chris Payne, you can find me on Wombling, we've got some wonderfully bad drawings in the blog. But here we go. A little bit of explanation. So what is the problem? So the thing is, the trigger for our emails that are going out is an incoming post from the mobile application of a timesheet. So someone submits their timesheet, and they may actually be submitting multiple timesheet entries. So because we're actually having a RESTful service, not doing something like batch, which is batching up all of the timesheet entries in one go, each of those exists as a separate resource. We can have hundreds of these darn posts coming through. So what do we use to actually trigger the email that's getting sent out? Because we only want to send one email. So if 100 timesheet entries come through, one email which says you've got 100 timesheet entries that have just been successfully posted, or if they just have one comes through, then one email which says you've just had one that's gone through. Now, how do we do that, and how do we actually bring them together? Now, obviously, we could do some kind of scheduled job, which sends at the end of the day, says, these are all the ones you've got, but that's pretty bad. I mean, I want a response now, I don't want a response at the end of the day. So I want something along the lines of the first timesheet entry comes on, creates this little bloke with a hat so that everyone listens to him, because hats make people important. If you do SAP HCM, you will understand that. And he has a little watch. And he sticks up a flag when he starts, and all the other timesheet entries that come after him go, ooh, look, there's a flag. I'm going to go after that guy. He's obviously important. He's wearing a hat. Now, that guy with a little hat, his watch rings, it goes bring, bring. And he says, okay, guys, right, all together now, we're going to send ourselves in an email. Brilliant. Now, the question is, how do I do that in code? Well, it kind of works like this. So we have our servlet, which has a doPost method. And that calls our mail handler, which you can imagine is kind of like this guy who has got a cupboard. And in his cupboard, he has a stack of shelves, and each shelf is for a particular user. And for a given user, there's an instance which represents the mail handler for that particular user. Now, this is kind of like the singleton method that I really hate. But it's not really a singleton because it isn't just one instance that gets returned, it's multiple, but it's still kind of singleton-y-ish. I don't know what the pattern is. Could be a factory, but doesn't seem to be to me. Find out, write in the comments of the blog if you actually understand what I'm talking about. Or if you don't, write in the comments of the blog. I love comments. Anyway, so the mail handler goes, hey, do I have an instance for this particular user? And if they do, then they return it. If they don't, then they create a new instance for the user. Now, on the creation of the instance, we create this new thing called a thread. Now, a thread is like an asynchronous task that runs alongside. And that thread has this little clock in it, which says, I'm going to wait for a certain amount of time. Now, once we've got the instance, we can actually add the timesheet entry to that instance. So we add the entry, and any more posts that come through obviously get returned that same instance, and they can just add more entries to it. Now, when the clock goes bring bring, or the time's up or whatever, then what we do is that thread goes and it removes the instance from the cupboard. It doesn't actually delete the instance, but what it does is it removes it from the cupboard. So if the mail handler is then asked, could I have an instance for this user, it goes and creates a new one. This current instance we're doing is now finished. The list of timesheet entries that have been added to it is now finalized. So we can actually send the email without the worry that another entry is going to be coming in at the same time. So it removes the instance and then grabs all the entries from the instance and sends an email because it has a reference to that instance within itself in the thread. Now, the way that we do that in Java to make sure that we don't have multiple threads calling the same thing so we're trying to remove while something's trying to add at the same time. How do we do that? You can use this thing called synchronized. So you specify that only one thread can have access to this piece of code, this block of code at any given time, which is very useful. It's kind of like putting an enqueue on in ABAP and you're saying only one thing can have access to this. While you get the entry, it's synchronized, so while I'm removing it, nothing can be adding a new one. If you have multiple things trying to access synchronize, the first one that gets there gets access, and the other ones have to wait until the first one's finished. So yes, this is a bottleneck in our code, but it hasn't really caused me any huge problems at the moment. So we send that email. So, in actually sending the email, how do we do that? Well, there's this thing called MIME, which is multi-purpose internet message extensions. I had to look that up on Wikipedia. I had no idea what it means. As far as I know, MIME is MIME, and it works, and you do it in emails and all sorts of other places as well. Now, there are two main subtypes to the multi-part MIME, which are important I'm going to talk about, which is the multi-part related and the multi-part alternative. You might remember in the bad old days, you probably don't, hey, goodness knows, the bad old days where you just have an email which would be just fully text, you know, when you had a BlackBerry and stuff. But nowadays, your emails are beautifully formatted, and you can have the HTML formats, and you have the inline images. And the way that it does this is by, rather than just having just one part of your MIME message, which is the body, you can have multiple parts to your MIME message. Now, the multi-part related basically says, okay, these different bits are all part of the same message. So it's kind of like just having lots of different bits to your message, but they're all related. So, you know, if you're missing one, then the whole message is going to be buggered up. So this is the difference between multi-part related and multi-part mixed, but it's not that important. The thing is, we use related as part of the way that we actually send the inline messages. Because what we want to do is say that this text and this image are related together. Now, when it comes to the text, you know, we have to have, just to make sure that we can support those people who are still using the ancient BlackBerry, is to have the plain text as well as the HTML text, so that we've got the two formatting. So your mail client can actually decide what is the best way to display the email. If it can display HTML, then it will display the HTML. If it can't, then it will display the plain text, which is, you know, kind of useful. The HTML obviously can have a link in it to the image, which means that we can have a nice inline image. So that's just how it's put together. What does that result in is basically an email, which has got the HTML part, and then the image, which is inline of that, which has come through the related part of the MIME message. And that makes us all happy, which is great. So that was that's today's blog, nice and short again. Stay tuned for some more blogs in this series. Goodness knows what we're going to be blogging about next. There's a whole bunch more information in the blog itself. Please go down, look at the code, try it out. One of the things I found out is SAP NetWeaver Cloud is really the current version of it. The mail handler is particularly picky, so some of the stuff that you might find out there on the web on how to actually do inline messaging won't work, because you have to do it in a special way to get around it using the SAP NetWeaver Cloud. So I hope you enjoyed the blog, and I will see you next time. Cheers.